From Inchstrand on the Dingle Peninsula in County Kerry. This beach is 4 miles long and one of the most famous in Ireland. As a film location, it has been immortalised in movies like Far and Away and Ryan's Daughter. Later in the programme, I'll be heading down a country road with one of the all-time greats of country music, George Hamilton IV, as we compose a scene in watercolours. The intricate coastline of the Dingle Peninsula is arguably the most spectacular in Ireland. Here on the North Shore is just one beautiful sandy beach after another. Mountain ranges run the whole length of the Dingle Peninsula like a backbone. From Slieve Mish in the east to Brandon and Mount Eagle on the western edge. Here's that country road I was talking about, and my guest, George Hamilton IV. George, I know you're no stranger to Ireland. You've been doing a tour now for quite a while with Sandy Kelly. What's that all about?
Well, Sandy stars in a musical play about the life of Patsy Cline, and she recommended me to be the narrator in it, the storyteller. And she often teases me and tells me the only reason I'm in the show is to waffle while she changes costumes and puts a new wig on or something.
And did you know Patsy Cline personally?
I did. I had the privilege of touring with her in the late 50s. I knew her in the early stages of her career. And believe me, she didn't open the doors for ladies in country music. She kicked them down. She was a powerful lady.
Traveling light, just moving on down the road and traveling light.
Was there always music in your family as a child, or where did the interest in music come from?
My grandfather was a real hillbilly from the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, and he moved down out of the mountains to work for the railroad. That's how I became a city billy instead of a hillbilly. I used to sit on his knee and play with his railroad watch, and he'd take out those old 78 records by Jimmy Rogers, the Singing Brakeman, and Gene Autry, and Roy Acuff and the Smoky Mountain Boys. And he had a wind-up Victrola, and he'd wind it up and put the 78s on there. And I sat on his knee and learned to love country music because of him.
And what age were you then whenever you got into the music scene itself and the record industry?
I started recording, believe it or not, in 1956, 45 years ago this year. As those were the days when Elvis was on the scene and Buddy Holly, and Gene Vincent. And I was touring around the country with those guys and on what they call rockabilly shows. In the late 50s, if you were from the South and played a guitar and said y'all, they called you a rockabilly. Sam Cooke and Clyde McPhatter were great artists, of course, but they also loved country music. And I remember we used to tour, all of us together, on a couple of Greyhound buses. So it was the common denominator for us. We all became friends through music. And it was when I first realized, Dermot, that music's really a bridge between cultures and races and people from different backgrounds. We had something in common that we all loved, and we got along great.
You then got involved with the Grand Ole Opry.
Yes.
You must have met a lot of interesting people there.
Well, the Grand Ole Opry is the longest running radio program in the history of broadcasting. It's been on the air now since 1925, 75 years. I joined the Opry in 1960, so I've been a member now for 40 years. Sometimes I feel like a creature from Jurassic Park, but the Opry is kind of the mother church of country music, It's the love of my life, really, that and my wife, of course.
What are you working on at the minute?
Sandy Kelly and I have been working on an Irish folk album. Her husband Michael is producing it, and we've been recording it in Ballina on the West Coast. album of Irish folk songs called On an Irish Country Road. And we've been at it now for about 4 years, so I'm hoping it'll see the light of day soon. About ready to get it out there.
Well, tell me, have you ever painted before?
I can remember back when I was about 6 or 7, when I first started grammar school, my teacher put an easel up with a poster board on it and gave us a little brush and some watercolors and said, "Get on with it, kids," and that's the last time I've ever attempted to paint, and it's been 50-some years now, so I'm a little nervous about all this.
Well, hopefully now it'll not be much longer till I have you painting.
All right.
Just later today.
I'm looking forward to it.
I have an easel set up for you as well.
Really?
And it's on an Irish country road.
All right. And
So-
you'll be the teacher this
Exactly.
time, huh?
Now, I can't promise you the Blue Ridge Mountains or the Shenandoah Valley, but I can promise you the Dingle Peninsula and
All right.
some fantastic scenery.
I'm sure that'll be beautiful. I've never been there before.
This Ocean World Aquarium in Dingle houses a marvellous array of underwater life and is a true celebration of the diversity of life beneath the waves. It is thanks to the support and cooperation of the local inshore and deep sea fishermen that this huge collection of marine life can be experienced by the public. This little pier at Dunquin village is the gateway to the Blasket Islands, about 1.5 miles off the coast. The 7 islands are still alive with the stories and culture of their inhabitants, even though the last of them left for the mainland in 1953. There are 7 Blasket Islands in all. The largest, Great Blasket, has an extraordinary cultural heritage, which lives on in the songs and literature created by its former inhabitants. The best known are The Island Man, 20 Years Agrown, and The Life of Peg Sayers. The western edge of the Dingle Peninsula is Ireland's early Christian heartland. There are more ancient sites here than anywhere else in the country. Some have hardly changed with the passing centuries. Galris Oratory is one of the best preserved early Christian church buildings in Ireland. Its design was based on an upturned boat. Built of unmortared stone, it is still watertight after more than 1,000 years. Martine Moriarty is a painter who uses glass as her canvas. Originally from England, she now lives and works at Ballyferriter on the west of the peninsula.
I came over on holiday with a friend and we just toured around Ireland. Didn't know where we were going, just sort of having a good time. And when I came round the corner and saw Dingle Bay, and I just felt like I was coming home. It was just an unbelievable feeling, and I'd never had that feeling before. I've been all over the world and came to Dingle and it was just like, this is where I have to be.
What is it about this area that seems to attract a lot of craftspeople from England?
It's very inspirational. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful place to be. It's a little bit unreal. You know, it's not like the real world. We've kind of come onto the peninsula and shut a door to the real world, and we've all escaped it.
So where did the idea for the glasswork come from?
One of my tutors at college said to me that my paintings were very similar to stained glass, because I used to quite often put a black line around to depict each area, and the colours were very bright as well. And he kind of gave me the idea that maybe I should try working on glass, but I wasn't allowed to do glasswork at college because I was a fine artist, so I used to do it at home. Slowly over the years I did more and more and started a business when I left college.
Are you inspired by the local flora and fauna in this area?
Yeah, it's my favourite subject. I love animals and I love just being in the countryside, and when I'm out, you know, walking, I'm constantly seeing pictures and, you know, things I could paint. Fuchsias grow wild around here, and I'm constantly asked to do fuchsias, whether it's doors, windows, screens, you know, little sun catchers. Everybody seems to love the fuchsia.
Martine, there's one particular painting in your studio, and it seems to combine both your styles.
Yeah, that's the type of painting I'd do if I was allowed to paint how I'd like all the time, because I often do commission work, and you have to paint quite detailed and tightly, and sometimes I just need to escape and do a painting for myself, and that would be the type of thing I do.
Take me through the process of making a piece of glasswork.
Often the customer would come and say they'd like a window or a door or a fire screen or whatever piece of glasswork they need. So I would always do it onto paper first to get that design right. That's a very important part of it. Once they're happy with that, I draw it up onto a big sheet of paper, the same size as the thing I'm going to make, and that would be used as a template. Then I would draw on all the black leading. It's a little bit like icing a cake. It comes out wet, and then it sets later on, you know, as the air gets to it. And then later on I come along and do the colour.
What are the colours made from?
They're a spirit-based paint, especially for glass. They're made in France, I believe, and I sometimes have trouble getting them. I have to, you know, send away for them. But yeah, they're just proper glass paint.
And can you blend the colours on the glass itself?
You can, yes. Actually, while they're still wet, obviously, you can get a sort of marbling effect. You know, if you needed to get on a leaf, say the shading, you know, where the sun's hitting it, so you can use them quite well.
Do you sell widely in Ireland?
Yeah, I do. I get a lot of Irish customers. I do a lot of work for hotels and guest houses and bed and breakfasts and shops, and I would work with interior designers and architects. And then, on the other hand, a lot of my work goes abroad as well. We're often shipping stuff out to America, France, Germany, England.
Earlier, I promised George an Irish country road, and I think I've found another fine example here, with a quaint Irish house thrown in for good measure. George, I've taken you all the way from Nashville to the gateway to the Dingle Peninsula. And I've picked this scene for one reason only, because I don't think you'll have seen anything like that before.
It's completely new to me, and it's so Irish looking, you know. And the colors are interesting. Whoever built it obviously has an eye for color and variety. Yeah. I guess I'm a typical American tourist today, because that to me conjures up all sorts of warm thoughts of the Emerald Isle, and of course the Quiet Man and John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara and all that.
Well, here, George, all you have to do is transfer that onto the paper itself. Now, I'm going to help you with this, but
I hope so.
And then we can get some of that colour down. So if you just start there with that far end wall of the house. That's the sketch finished, George, and you're going to make a great job with this. I know you are. First of all, I want you to wet some of this watercolour paper just in that area. But we're going to be putting some colour on here in a moment. But this is just to keep some areas of the paint wet while we're working on other areas. So there you go. Just
sort of dampening it down a little bit, right?
That's right. And keep the damp area towards the centre of the... That's it. And cutting neatly around the actual roof of the house itself. Anywhere that there's a wet piece of paper, the wash will run to.
Yeah.
It'll run into the damp area. If you keep the paper dry on the roof, the wash will stay away from there.
So I should try to get as close as I can to the chimney and the roof without actually getting on it.
Right. Now, let me just load that brush again.
All right.
This is a mixture of cerulean blue and a little bit of crimson. And that's to give some warmth in the sky. Now, you see what I'm doing there? Look. Big sweeps up and around to give the feeling of clouds. Now, let me get you some blue.
Okay.
We may not have it here today, but sure, we'll put it in anyway. We'll make the sky blue. Now, you see that? Like,
yeah.
Now, if you come across the top, first of all, to get that line, and then work this blue around that chimney pot, look. But if you come over the chimney, then we can't get that white back again. So I'll leave that to you.
Okay.
Coming across, that's it.
Okay to come along here, closer?
As long as you cut nice and tight. We've moved on quite a bit now, George, and put in some of this foliage behind the house. Can you see how the darkness of the foliage against the buildings gives form and structure to the buildings themselves?
Absolutely.
If we didn't have those dark trees behind the house, it's difficult to tell where the house stops and the sky starts. Happy enough so far?
I sure am, yeah. I'm learning.
That's good. The next thing we have to do now is try and get this colour of the house itself. It's a strange colour now, I must say.
It almost looks like a gingerbread house to me, or sort of a cake or something.
Yes.
You know.
But it's got that feel about it, okay, you know.
Yeah.
But it's very, very pretty to look at. Now, I'm going to try mixing that with Windsor yellow, some light red, and a bit of crimson. Now, if we just use the yellow to tone that down slightly, we should have that colour. Let me see if this is close to it. That's not too bad.
That's amazing, yeah.
Well, you see, the colour mixing, George, is years of practice. But as long as you know to limit the colours that you have and try and make the best out of them, and that's only going to come through practice. So what I want you to do now is take the number 8 brush and put that colour on over all of the house, but cutting around the windows. Can you see that we have a white reveal between the wall and the window frame itself?
Yes.
It's very important that we retain that white. So if I give you that brush,
okay,
you can start cutting around that. Now we're going to do another jump. We're going to jump from here to the road. And we'll forget about this bit in between in the meantime. And the road is not going to be dissimilar in colour to the colour of the house to begin with. But then we're going to feed a few texture colours into it.
Grainy grey?
Well, probably a little bit of bluey grey or something like that. So we're starting with raw sienna and water. You see, it's very close to the colour of the house.
That seems strange to me, to get from that to grey and blue or whatever.
Exactly. But as you look across the surface of the road, there is a lot of warmth there with the light on the surface of the road. So the only way to give that warmth is to use the raw sienna colour. So I'm going to let you pull that in. From the background, we must work towards ourselves, where we're standing. Now, those are the lines of that beautiful shadow that's there. Pull it back that way.
And do I have to be careful about not getting into the sidewalk there, or the lower end of the wall?
You see the next stroke? If you take it from here and pull right down the middle.
Okay.
And then the next one from there and down the right-hand side. At least the brush stroke is going in the direction of the road. Now, that looks very, very flat at the moment. But we have to put some of that texture on. And I'm going to use a mixture of French ultramarine and a little bit of crimson. I know that might come up as a bluey purple, but at the same time, once it mixes with the colour that's already there, it'll turn greyish. Now, it'll be a bit drastic looking at the start.
Wow.
You see? Now, we must dry off that brush and start blending. By blending, do that there and brush one colour into the other. You see the way it disappears? Now, from there, we can move on to the wall. It's a challenging colour to mix that, because it's grey, but it's not grey. There's a lot of blue in that. I'm going to use Windsor blue and neutral tint and quite a lot of water. That's not 100 miles off it. You see, once you have a colour, if it looks too dark, by adding water, you can take the colour down quite a bit. Let me give you another brush and do the pillar. I'll just guide you through that. If you just block in the pillar right across to the far side.
Is that all right to go do
Yeah.
that? Am I being too
No, you're fine. You're getting confidence.
bold with this?
Come into the water and thin that down slightly. Just a tiny little bit, take the excess off, that's it, and off you go again. Right, George, we're just about to move on now and do this little grass bank on the far side of that shed.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to be very careful here because we need to cut out around the white of the shed.
Yeah.
Now, this is a number 5 brush with a mixture of Windsor yellow, a tiny bit of Windsor blue, and a little bit of light red, just to give a light green. Get rid of most of the paint first of all, and then you can start working down along the side of the house. You know, just sort of daubing on with the brush. Come down around that pencil line there as well.
Right in here?
Yeah, because that bush there is going to be in shadow where this one here is in sunlight, so there's going to be a difference in the colour. But what I want to do now, George, is show you how to put some texture into that and shadows within that green itself. So I'm mixing up here a bit more Windsor blue and light red into that mixture that we already have, and just put a little bit of darkness in there. Like, while that's wet, the other colour will bleed through it, and it just gives a bit of change in texture there. And the darkness around the house makes the house stand out even more.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what I think you should do is put a more yellow colour up towards the top there. So along the top of that bush there, just keep that nice and bright. I've always imagined that the painting process is a bit like the music business, you know, where you're layering colour on colour.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from what I know about music, which is very little, it seems to be that there's a lot of tracks being laid down in different layers.
Usually when we go in to record, we'll go in with a small number of musicians and we'll maybe have a bass and the drums and a guitar player. And you do your vocals and then come back in the next day and decide what you want to add to it. As you say, sort of layer it, you know, you bring in other musical colors.
George, now that we have most of the greenery in on the right hand side of the painting, we can come back to the house and concentrate on the window panes themselves. Now if you look there, you can see that the window pane is a clear piece of glass, but what we're seeing through the glass is the darkness in the room beyond. So the colour that I've mixed there is light red and ultramarine, and this just gives me a very dark colour. Now this is a number 5 brush that's pretty well worn, so it actually does a good job here for us. You see the flat top on it? If I pull that down in one stroke, I can get a window pane. You see that? The flat edge goes along the frame and just pull across like that. So if you want to take that and do the 2 panes
Below
underneath, yeah.
Okay.
Just turn it on its side, George.
On the side
yeah,
a little bit?
It'll be wider.
Get a little flatter brush. This is real tricky here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it'd be so easy to mess it up, I guess.
I know, they're tricky little bits, you know, and it takes a wee bit of practice with that brush just to be able to get one stroke. Now you can see that around the window there's a little frame, a brown frame, and
That's
a brown...
scary for me. It's so thin, a little thin brown line.
Well, again, just with that brush there, we can thin out the point slightly. This is a mixture of burnt sienna with some neutral tint, and the neutral tint just gives the burnt sienna a nice rich brown colour. Now I'll do this one here for you. A couple of practice runs first. There we go, look.
Very light ones. So.
Yeah. It's unusual the way you have a little frame around the white window frame, and then there's the windowsill. In the old days they used to use the windowsill, which would have been sandstone, outside the kitchen to sharpen the knives.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Now the same thing has to be done now with the door frame. So you can see that is quite a dark door frame, but it's burnt sienna and neutral tint. There's a wee bit of white in the interior, look, you see just in the rim around that, and then we can pull in a few boards on the door, look. George, you know, I think it's near finished. Are you happy with it?
I certainly am. I'm very surprised.
But listen, you've got this little red roof in the background, and I think red just complements the green very, very well. but I think it looks a little bit flat, and we need to put in some of those shadows. You see the shadows on the road cast by the house at this time of the day?
I'd have never thought of that, you know. They're there, though, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's that can give a lot of life to the painting, just as a finishing touch. Now, I know, George, this may look a bit scary, but with a mixture of French ultramarine and some light red, I'm just going to put a wash on over that entire house. So,
it's scary when you do that. It looks like it's going to damage it somehow.
But I want you to take that brush and just more or less block in that area. Go around the windows, and I'll use the number 8 then.
All around them?
Yeah. I'm just going to use the number 8.
And how about this here? That's not going to run, is
No,
it?
I'll take some of that.
Okay.
And you can see that these bushes here are catching sunlight on the left-hand side, so I want to put some shadow here and along the wall. So let me load that brush again.
All right.
And you can start there and block in that wall. But don't put any shadow on the top of the wall, because it has a lot of sunlight on it.
All right.
And that brings us down now to the roadway. Get that area covered in as quickly as you can, but don't go over the pencil lines that we have for the shadow.
Okay.
There's a bit of sunlight coming out there along that entrance to the back of the house.
Is that okay out there?
Yeah, fill away. You see, you're
Sort of a little dingle peninsula out there.
now. Can you see how that shadow has given a real depth to that now? I think that's enough. You happy with it?
I'm very surprised, very pleased and surprised and grateful to you, because I feel like I've had an education today and a lot of encouragement.
Well, there you are, George. I can't wait until I go to Nashville and do a few of your local scenes.
Well, that would suit me fine. I'd like to take you backstage at the Grand Ole Opry and show you around, and introduce you to some of the hillbillies like myself.
I'd look forward to that. We could maybe paint the Grand Ole Opry.
Absolutely.
George, all you've left to do now is sign it.
Okie doke.
So down here on the right-hand side.
All righty. Okie doke.
The 4th.
Yes, sir. Father of the 5th. Grandfather of the 6th.
Gosh. George, it has been a pleasure.
Well, as we say in Tennessee,